Okay, let's get started. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good everything else. I hope all of you are well wherever you're joining from. Before I get started, I would like to let you all know that we have simultaneous interpretation into English and French. So for those of you who don't know, although many of us know already from COVID times, please click on the globe icon in the lower part of your Zoom window and select a language. Let me introduce myself. My name is Natalie Campbell, and I'm the Regional Customary Tenure and Gender Advisor for the Mekong Region Land Governance Project. And it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar, Multi-Stakeholder Platforms for Land Policy Reform. What have we learned? It's very nice to see many of you participants, some familiar faces online. So today's webinar is co-hosted by the Land Portal Foundation and the Mekong Region Land Governance Project, or MRLG, as we'll be referring to it as. We're very pleased to bring together our very well-established and experienced colleagues from across the Mekong region, Africa, and around the world for this very important conversation and a very timely conversation as well. Across Africa, Latin America, Asia, multi-stakeholder platforms, or MSPs, as we'll be using that acronym this session, have become essential mechanisms for shaping land policies and land reform. These platforms bring together civil society, government actors, farmer organizations, private sector, academia, importantly, local communities, and development partners to analyze challenges, negotiate priorities, and ideally co-create pathways forward for a more just and effective land governance. They help manage issues and tensions, improve communication and alignment, and build political support needed for reforms that are both durable and equitable, and hopefully also meaningful. MRLG is a project that has been supported by the government of Switzerland through SDC, with co-financing from Germany and Luxembourg. And MRLG has been working on multi-stakeholder platforms since 2014 to strengthen the tenure security of smallholder farmers throughout the Mekong region. At the same time, global initiatives such as the Food and Agriculture Organization at the UN, FAO, the International Land Coalition, the ILC, the Comité Technique Français de Développement, sorry for the pronunciation, and Land for Life program have gained substantial experience supporting multi-stakeholder platforms across West Africa, East Africa, and Asia, and of course also Latin America for some of our partners involved. From 2024 to 2025, MRLG has partnered with 3 of these programs in a joint learning initiative, resulting in a comparative analysis of multi-stakeholder platforms and their experiences across 5 countries, namely Mali, Guinea, Malawi, Cambodia, and Laos. Lessons from 5 country case studies, which you'll find the barcodes here, or the QR codes, they were synthesized in a collaborative capitalization of experience report. That study provides valuable insights, but today's purpose of the webinar is really to open this up to a broader dialogue for a more practice-oriented space, taking the discourse to the ground, hearing from the people, most importantly, who are part of and implementing these multi-stakeholder platforms, to unpack how these platforms can contribute to land policy reform, what makes them successful, what are the challenges, and how they evolve under different political and institutional conditions. Essentially, we want to unpack the value of MSPs, but also unpack their complexities. Before we start with questions, I have a few logistical notes about the webinar to share. This webinar is being streamed on multiple platforms, so if you do have to leave us early, we're sorry about that, but you can happily go back and watch this on YouTube and LinkedIn, and I believe potentially some other platforms as well. If you have any questions throughout the sessions, and we really hope you do, good ones, of course, all questions are good ones, but please really try and sink your teeth into our questions, into our content. We really want to hear from you. Please post them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That will make it easier for me as the moderator to ask our partners the questions instead of in the chat. And of course, we'll try and answer as many as possible. You will all receive the link to the video after this recording, so thank you for participating. And finally, there will also be an article with key messages about the webinar that will be made available on both the Land Portal and MRLG websites, so please keep your eye out for that. So without further ado, let me start our discussions with Christian Casselnet. Christian is an agronomist and an ecologist. He's working with GRET on rural development and natural resource management across various countries, including Brazil, West Africa, and Southeast Asia. He has been the deputy team leader of MRLG since during phase one, from 2014 to 2018. He's a colleague of mine, and I'm very happy that he will be the first one introducing the webinar today. He is also the author of the comparative analysis, which was shared on the screen earlier. So, Christian, my first question is, what are multi-stakeholder platforms? It's a term we're going to hear for the entire webinar. So let's get people a little bit familiar with what the term is, multi-stakeholder platforms. How are they diverse? Why did people start thinking about multi-stakeholder platforms, or at least naming them as multi-stakeholder platforms? Over to you, Christian.
Merci Nathalie. Bien entendu, l'idée de plateforme multi-acteurs est assez ancienne, mais dans le domaine de la gouvernance foncière, ce concept fait partie des recommandations des gouvernances, des Voluntary Guidelines for Governance of Tenure. Excusez-moi, je connais en anglais. Les directives volontaires pour la gouvernance du foncier et des ressources naturelles. Il était bien précisé qu'il était recommandé de mettre en place ces plateformes pour accompagner, accompagner les politiques de réforme qui prendraient en compte les directives. Accompagner et suivre et, appuyer. Euh, En fait, il y avait des plateformes qui existaient précédemment, avant 2012. Par exemple, au Malawi, dans un des pays qui va être représenté aujourd'hui, il y avait une plateforme qui s'appelait LandNet depuis 1999. Donc, ça, les ONG, en particulier la société civile, n'a pas attendu ces recommandations pour s'organiser. Mais les plateformes qui sont recommandées dans les directives volontaires, c'est des plateformes qui intègrent tous les acteurs et en particulier, bien entendu, les gouvernements. Alors, quand on a fait notre travail d'étude et de réflexion comparative avec les trois autres grands programmes qui sont présents ici, euh, on a constaté qu'en fait, il y avait quand même une diversité de formes, de plateformes qui existaient aujourd'hui. Et ça, c'est beaucoup lié à l'attitude ou à l'intérêt des gouvernements. Dans les pays où le gouvernement est très ouvert à la réforme, ou en tout cas ouvert au dialogue, les plateformes en général adoptent une forme euh, ouverte aussi, une forme dans laquelle ils essayent d'avoir la participation de toutes les parties prenantes intéressées, et y compris bien entendu la recherche, le secteur privé, etc. Et ces plateformes fonctionnent sur le mode du dialogue et la formulation la réflexion conjointe et la formulation de recommandations en essayant euh, de travailler en permanence avec le gouvernement. Euh, un bon exemple, c'est celui de la Guinée, où la plateforme multi-acteurs sur le foncier comment dire, est dirigée et présidée par deux ministères en rotation. La La coprésidence est assurée par la CNOP, la Confédération nationale paysanne, et elle inclut aussi des ONG, des chercheurs, etc. Et y compris d'ailleurs, bien qu'ils ne soient pas formellement membres, des partenaires techniques et financiers, en particulier la FAO et l'AFD qui appuient cette plateforme. Mais alors, dans d'autres cas, le gouvernement n'est pas forcément très ouvert à ce type de dialogue, soit parce qu'il, voilà, pour des raisons culturelles et politiques, je dirais. Euh, et dans ce cas-là, on trouve des plateformes plus restreintes, euh, plus focalisées, qui travaillent plutôt sur des thèmes techniques précis et qui essayent de formuler ou de formuler des recommandations acceptables pour les gouvernements. Et ça, c'est le cas effectivement des alliances qui ont été soutenues par le MRLJ, puisque dans chaque pays, il y a deux coalitions différentes, deux alliances différentes, une qui se focalisait sur le droit coutumier et l'autre sur l'investissement agricole responsable. Mais ces plateformes voilà, sont composées d'organisations
Oui.
qui décident de travailler ensemble et qui ont une philosophie commune. Voilà, merci.
Thank you, Christian. And again, apologies for pushing for a speedy turnaround, but we do have lots of panelists that we'd like to hear from. So thank you very much, Christian, for that background. I think what's very interesting is you reflecting on sort of typologies of what multi-stakeholder platforms are, what are the enabling conditions, and how they can take different forms. This is something that many of our panelists will be picking back up on. So thank you very much for setting the scene, Christian. Now let me introduce our next speaker, Amel Benkala. Amel is the project manager at GRET and has been working for over 15 years in collaboration with the Western African civil society organizations and national and international research centers. Since 2012, she's been involved with facilitating the Technical Committee on Land Tenure and Development, a think tank on land governance supported by AFD, the French Development Agency. The committee generally aims to generate knowledge and stimulate debate in order to promote multi-stakeholder dialogues in the process of developing and implementing land policies. Amel has also been partnered with us in this process of reflecting on MSPs that we've been doing. So Amel, you have lots of great experience. My question for you is, why were some of these platforms created? And what are the different stakeholders? What types of stakeholders were involved? What does that look like? Over to you, Amel.
Merci beaucoup, Nathalie. Donc, comme l'a dit Christian, hein, dans la suite de l'adoption des VVGT, hein, tous les acteurs ont exprimé dans les pays les besoins d'avoir des espaces de dialogue ouverts et durables avec l'État pour échanger autour des enjeux relatifs à la gouvernance foncière. Et de ce point de vue, les plateformes en format restreint ou en format plus inclusif, élargi, intégrant l'État, jouent un rôle considérable. Et le comité foncier, comme vous l'avez dit, depuis sa création il y a 30 ans, avait pour but de favoriser le dialogue entre la recherche et les politiques pour vraiment s'appuyer sur des résultats et des données empiriques pour éclairer l'action publique. Et de ce point de vue-là, il nous a semblé important, suite à l'adoption des VGT, de pouvoir aussi appuyer ces dialogues dans les pays, venir soutenir les réseaux d'acteurs qui étaient en train de se constituer ou les plateformes qui venaient d'être créées. Et c'est vraiment en ce sens qu'on a voulu accompagner leur programme d'action. Donc, comme ça a été dit, hein, les formats sont très variables selon les pays, selon la volonté de l'État ou pas d'instituer ce type d'espace. Donc, on y retrouve souvent les services de l'État lorsque l'État en est partie prenante, des organisations de la société civile, des organisations paysannes, des autorités traditionnelles parfois, le secteur privé. Et nous, ce qui nous a semblé vraiment très fructueux, c'est d'accompagner dans ces plateformes, dans ces réseaux, le dialogue entre la recherche, la société civile et les services de l'État. parce qu'il nous semble que c'est ce qui permet de donner de la crédibilité à ces plateformes et donc d'accompagner la production de connaissances en conduisant des études sur des sujets à enjeu dans le pays, en organisant des concertations à la base, en ouvrant des espaces de dialogue national. Et on a remarqué que c'était des approches très fructueuses pour, une fois les plateformes créées, aussi leur donner de la légitimité et de la crédibilité pour pouvoir nourrir dans la durée ce dialogue avec l'État.
Thank you very much, Aman. Yes, it's really critical we look at within the diversity of the typologies of multi-stakeholder platforms. We also have such a diversity of actors and different expertise and positions, right? So we're always talking about furthering and getting deeper into the complexities of multi-stakeholder platforms, which is why each look different, each have different results, and ultimately serve different purposes. Thank you very much, Aman. Now let's shift a bit to our country cases. We have 3 examples or 3 folks who will talk about examples from different countries, from Cambodia, Malawi, and Sierra Leone. So let me start with Cambodia. Soksabai Tolsochia, thank you very much for joining us. Sochia is the Deputy Director of RECOF TC, the Center for People and Forests in Cambodia. He has over 20 years of experience in natural resource management, especially working with community forest management, protected areas and community protected areas, indigenous peoples, and local communities. His work involves both the implementation on the ground, helping communities secure land and resource rights, supporting sustainable forestry practices, and promoting gender equality, and also engaging in policy developments, including forestry reform, community forestry legislation, and participatory forest monitoring systems. So Chia, please tell us about Cambodia and the multi-stakeholder platforms you are involved in Cambodia. Over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. So again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. So as we all know that multi-stakeholder platform, there are a few in Cambodia, but I like to pick ones to share with you that called Alliance for Recognition of Customary Tenures in Cambodia. So I think the customary tenures, I like to stress, this is land and forested land customary tenure. So that is the coalition of civil society organization coming together, working to promote equitable land and natural resource management in the countries, and mainly on how to promote the recognition of customary land tenures rights of the local community. And I think, and then the Lion was formed, I think was initiated in 2018, I think apparently under the framework of Mekong Regional Land Governance Project. And I think the member of the alliance there was 8 organizations coming from different capacity. I think international organization, conservation organization like Wildlife Conservation Society, Conservation Internationals, and RECOF, where I come from, I think, and the local NGO who coordinate the network of civil society in Cambodia, for instance, NGO Forum and the grassroots indigenous organization like Highlander Association and Indigenous People Organization of Cambodia as well, I think. And this brings together a diverse capacity from the networking, from the technical skill, and from the grassroots perspective to work together as a group, I think. And there was 2 main focus when we start. One is to actually promote the free, prior, and informed consent principle in planning, decision-making, and implementation concerning natural resource governance in the protected area context in Cambodia. I think through introducing the tool for participatory research use mappings and putting the tool into application on the ground and documenting experience and sharing widely. And then coming back with the experience, with the learning for our work on policies, advocacy, policy process, where we hopefully to use the learning from the experience to communicate our recommendation through policy development process. In Cambodia, for instance, the development of Cambodia environmental and natural resource codes, and lately the ministry guideline on community protected areas establishment. I think this is short about the alliance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sochia. You gave a great kickoff for us to see in a bit more depth what a country MSP will look like, and I'm sure these will take different iterations for our different panelists. Now, quickly, just a more logistical word for our panelists. I know it's difficult. If you could speak a bit more slowly for our interpreters, I think they would appreciate it, as we have much to discuss, and we hope that everyone stays on the same page and who is listening in. So thank you very much again, Sochia. Let's turn to Sierra Leone. Welcome to Abubakar Sabai Fore Musa, who is the Commissioner General of Sierra Leone's National Land Commission, where he leads the country's landmark transition towards an integrative, transparent, and decentralized land governance system under the 2022 land laws. He oversees the Commission's core functions, from land registration and dispute resolution to the development of the national cadastre, while driving digital transformation through partnerships, including with the World Bank, such as the World Bank-funded Sierra Leone Land Administration Project. He is a reform-minded leader with a background in GIS and public sector modernization. Mr. Fore Musa champions people-centered, evidence-based land governance across Sierra Leone and the wider region. We are very happy to have you today. Could you please tell us more about the multi-stakeholder platform on land governance in Sierra Leone from your perspective as a government official? Over to you, Abubakar. Are you with us online? We saw you earlier. Okay. Well, hopefully he will come back and join us later. So why don't we move forward and let's move towards, we have on the line, we have Kate with us, who is here. Excellent. So Kate Chibwana Nikata is the national facilitator for the multi-stakeholder platform on land governance in Malawi. She is an agricultural economist with over 8 years of experience advocating for responsible and inclusive land governance processes. She is a fellow under the Network of Excellence on Land Governance in Africa since 2018 and the University of Utrecht Land Academy since 2020. She co-chairs a platform on large-scale land-based investments in Malawi, together with the Malawi Confederation of Chamber and Commerce and Industry. She's co-authored several studies, of recent being an analytical look at the contribution of multi-stakeholder platforms in contributing to people-centered land governance in Malawi under the MRLG capitalization initiative. So thank you very much for joining, Kate. We're excited to hear from you. Can you give us a bit of insight about the multi-stakeholder platform in Malawi? And would you be able to focus a bit on the successes and lessons learned in an environment where the government is willing to come to the table? Over to you, Kate.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. The multi-stakeholder platform in Malawi was established in 2014. During this time, there was a lot of protracted debate around our land laws, then land bills. A lot of the issues surrounding this bill was the issue of unconsolidated and divergent views that were delaying the enactment of these laws during that time period. So it was at this time that the ILC and other civil society organizations in the country came together and thought that maybe if there was a coordinating body for the civil society to input into the land reform process as one, they would appear more coordinated and make more headway at that during this time period. It's also worth noting that as much as we have a cordial relationship now with the Ministry of Lands, during that time, the relationship was very adversarial and also affected this process of inputting into the land reform. So the MSP now became a stage, a neutral ground for bringing the civil society and the government officials to the table to come up with one bill that could later be enacted into parliament. The successes and the lessons that we learned, first of all, we saw that for a bill that had stalled from 2013, from 2006, after the establishment of the MSP, we saw a fast-track process, and in 2016, the bills were enacted. There was widespread awareness of the bills during that period as well, and also the beginning of a collaborative relationship whereby the first pilot of the land bills was an effort that was championed by government and also the civil society together. What we've learned among the many lessons that we've learned during this process, first of all, is to always keep the space open. The engagement is important, especially also when it comes to defining the relationship. Past advocating for passing of land laws and land reform, and now into implementation. How do we keep this space open so that we continue to advance the spirit behind the laws that we were advocating for, that we were advocating for the enactment back then? I think as a beginning, let me stop there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kate. Yeah, it's a very interesting to hear your experience, especially when the impetus for a multi-stakeholder platform is coming by the ministry, but also in a time of sensitivity. I think something that we might hear throughout the session today is the neutral ground, the fact that a multi-stakeholder platform could provide that space for sort of neutral discussions, where all of the various power dynamics might be lessened, and there might be a space for frank and meaningful conversation. Before I move back to Mr. Foy Musa, who has joined us again, I'd like to just hear quickly from Sochia slightly about how the multi-stakeholder platform in Cambodia managed without having too much investment and coordination from the government. Maybe if you could give just a 2-minute response to what Kate shared, an example from Cambodia as well.
Well, I think quickly, I think the alliance was a group of like-minded civil society organizations who come together working to pursue the same common goal. I think 2 things I was mentioned is to try to make sure that the process on the ground, the practice part is in respect of free, prior, and informed consent, inclusive process, and also trying to inform the policies development. So at certain level that we can do in Cambodia. So I think that, but there is a secretary support from the Mekong Land regional land governance for fortunately, I think, throughout the period that we have. So that's level.
Okay, thank you, Sochia. Yeah, the interesting case in Cambodia is also the fact that there are the like-minded civil society organizations that are coming together as an alternative and a sort of parallel platform to complement or assist, or also engage with the government, but not necessarily directly with the government as part of the multi-stakeholder platform. So thank you very much. I see that Abubakar Sape Foy Musa has joined us. Welcome back. We will turn to you. Could you tell us a bit more about multi-stakeholder platforms in Sierra Leone from your perspective as a government official? Welcome, and the mic is passed to you. I believe we are having some problems here. Sorry, I think there's just a bit of a problem with the interpretation. Please go ahead. Abu Bakar, sorry, I don't.
I think his microphone is not appearing. I think he has an issue with his microphone. Maybe he can leave and rejoin. Apologies.
Okay. Apologies for that. Why don't we let Abu Bakar come back and hopefully find a better connection or have some better luck with our mic. In the meantime, why don't we move on and introduce our final part of the panel. Actually, Abu Bakar, sorry, I see you're on video now. Does that mean your connection is a good one? Why don't we give it a bit of a test? Apologies.
Yeah, I think so. I think we give it a test.
Excellent. Okay, please then, after you. Round 2.
Okay. Yeah, sorry for the disturbance with the internet here. But I think I will go straight to my questions. First, to talk about the important role of multi-stakeholder platforms in Sierra Leone from the perspective of government. So from government perspective, we consider multi-stakeholder platforms to have played a very critical role in shaping the reform, the whole journey of the land reform over the years. This structure emerged as a space for critical stakeholders, including private sector, government, traditional authorities, civil society organizations, women groups, to come from time to time, discuss the challenges around land governance, the bottlenecks in the land administration, the challenges with traditional land administration processes, and then also move further to do some comparative analysis to see what is happening across countries.
Sorry, apologies to interrupt. Abu Bakar, if you could turn off your video, it might be better for the connection.
From those practices, also taking into consideration other frameworks that were developed, including the VGGT, the vision of the African Union for 2063, and other, very relevant regional as well as global frameworks have all been part of the document and instrument which have shaped the conversation, which the multi. Okay, let me try that. Turn the video off. Okay, let me try this. So, like I was saying, these are all these sort of instruments which have contributed to guiding the discussions for the multi-stakeholder platforms. These platforms were instrumental during the foundational stage of the Sierra Leone national land policy, which was adopted in 2015. Actually, establishing a roadmap to create a clearer, more fairer land system, and also making an effort to harmonize the dual tenure, that's the customary and the statutory tenure systems, formalizing transactions, empowering communities, boosting responsible investment, and securing land rights for all, especially for women and girls who constitute one of the most marginalized groups in society, and also taking into consideration how impactful that will be on national development and addressing also post conflict. Remember that we had 11-year civil unrest, and one of the critical issues that emerged in the Truth and Reconciliation process after the war was related to land.
Thank you very much, Abu Bakr. I'm not sure if we're having connection issues again. Okay, well, while you are working on your connection, I might suggest that for the moment, we move forward
These are all
Hi, Abu Bakr. It seems that your connection isn't very stable. And maybe at the moment, I think we can move to Inge because potentially you don't have such a stable connection. And let's loop back around to you. Please indicate to me when you are having a better connection. Thank you very much. It's very interesting always and to hear from a government perspective, especially when that government perspective is so inclusive. And mentioning the fact that this is a really necessary platform to impact sort of policy, but also to ensure that policy commitments are being implemented meaningfully. And of course, as one hat of mine is a gender advisor, and I'm very happy to hear you also talk about inclusion and the critical inclusion of women in these platforms. So thank you very much, and I hope that you are able to find a better connection. We're looking forward to hearing you later on as well. So let us move to our now final panelists for an international perspective. We have Ingeborg Gade, who is a land tenure officer at FAO. She is the FAO Land Tenure Team focal point for support to land policy reform and coordinates the team's overall support to sub-Saharan Africa. Before joining FAO 10 years ago, she did her PhD on rural actors and their participation in policy spaces. And she's supported multi-stakeholder processes on land in more than 25 countries. So thank you very much, Ingeborg. You have a lot of experience in this space. We're very excited to hear from you. So from your perspective, can you please tell us a bit about your experience in engaging in multi-stakeholder platforms and some of your thoughts? I know that you have lots to share. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. So yeah, first of all, as mentioned by previous speakers, it's important to identify from the outset, what are we talking about? What kind of platform? Is this a formal platform or informal coalition? For example, is that government decree in place for the establishment of this platform? These are some of the initial clarification that is important. FAO supports multi-stakeholder platforms through the government, based on strong political will. And why? Because we're talking about land reform. So for us, it's extremely important that there is a government buy-in. So whereas, of course, it's also very important to have parallel mechanisms in place to advocacy, capacity building, etc. When we talk about land reform, our experience is that it's important that the government feel that they are in the driver's seat. Because if they don't feel so, we have seen in many countries that can be a backlash. So this is also an important lessons learned.
Sorry, Inge.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit slower for our interpreters? Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So since 2012, FAO supported 30 multi-stakeholder platforms, both at the national and the local level. And I was lucky not only to follow that from headquarters, but also from the country level experience. And here I see from this experience that many MSPs, however, remain rather project-driven. And as I mentioned, often parallel mechanisms, and that not necessarily having a link to the land reform. So we have seen that MSPs can be very impactful if there's a very clear link and strong contribution to the land reform. And that can be, like, if possible, in written, so that it's clear for everyone what is exactly the role of the platform. So it's not coming to a surprise for the government, for example, that there is this platform in place. And then it's important that the platform is recognized by all parties. And this requires a tremendous work on trust building. So this takes time, but trust building is very important so everyone feel comfortable with the platform. And here we also need good neutral facilitators to bring everyone on board and feel comfortable. And another advantage that we experience with having the MSPs for the land policy firms is that besides helping to build more inclusive and solid policies reflecting a diversity of views, MSPs can also help to create some continuity in these countries where there's a lot of political instability. So take the example of Chad, where there's a multi-stakeholder platform in place. We had, at a point of time, 3 ministers within 1 year to leading this reform process. But because the MSP in Chad, we call it a multi-stakeholder committee, but this is just a matter of name, it's the same role. Thanks to this establishment of this multi-stakeholder mechanism, there will continuity. So when a new minister comes, it's more difficult for him to say, no, we don't want this, we don't want to build a process built on the principles of the voluntary guidelines, participation, inclusion, etc., which is the main challenge. Example of Chad as well, again. But because there's this process ongoing, when there is this turnover, the MSP helps to create continuity and can thus play a very positive role of bringing forward these non-linear land reforms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingeborg. Yes, that there's a lot in your comments that reflect our other panelists as well, what they're mentioning. You talked about legitimacy and trust, neutrality, and how multi-stakeholder platforms can really be key in continuity. And I think what you're touching on is something that's very interesting, which is sort of the governments must be in the driver's seat. And I think that there are shared perspectives on that in terms of the effectiveness of a multi-stakeholder platform. Briefly, our experience in Laos working on customary tenure has certainly seen that with various subsector working groups on land and forests, the buy-in from various different government departments and ministries, including specific champions, has really been able to, let's say, put our objective of increasing customary tenure recognition on a sort of fast track and is endorsing that, right? You have that stamp. But I think also in many ways, and potentially Sochia will touch on this later, that there is a space also and a value in having those alternative platforms, which are not necessarily government-led, but also full of development partners, reform actors of the like, which are non-government. So thank you for that. A lot of food for thought, and I think a very good point to pivot to our next speaker. So let me turn back to Christian. Christian, you've had a lot of experience in multi-stakeholder platforms, as we discussed earlier. So how successful have they been in land policy advocacy and reform? And beyond land reform and policy change, what are the changes that multi-stakeholder platforms can enable and the value there? So please, Christian, a very simple question. Over to you.
D'accord. Merci. Merci, je vais essayer d'être court. Tout d'abord, en termes d'impact de réussite, il faut dire que cet impact, il se produit souvent de manière discontinue. Il y a de longues périodes où la plateforme est en train de travailler, éventuellement en dialogue avec le gouvernement, et rien ne se passe. Et puis d'un seul coup, pour une raison ou une autre, il y a un changement dans l'ambiance politique, disons, qui fait que elle obtient des résultats. Je pourrais donner l'exemple en particulier de la réforme du foncier forestier au Laos, où il y a eu un travail pendant des années de plaidoyer sur cette question, en particulier de la société civile. Entre parenthèses, le gouvernement laotien n'est pas du tout partant pour une plateforme multi-acteurs avec la société civile, mais néanmoins, à travers les efforts qui ont été menés et en particulier par l'Alliance pour la forêt communautaire au Laos, incluant certains partenaires ministériels. Finalement, la loi est passée il y a quelques mois et ça va représenter un changement important pour des millions de paysans situés dans les zones considérées comme forêts, qui sont en fait les zones de collines, surtout peuplées par les minorités ethniques. Ce que je voudrais dire aussi, c'est que le succès ou les résultats des plateformes ne sont pas du tout restreints à la question du changement des lois ou des politiques, parce que souvent les politiques, même quand des politiques changent, leur application souvent met beaucoup de temps à devenir effective. Et là, les plateformes peuvent jouer un rôle aussi. Il y a plusieurs exemples dans l'étude. Au Mali, par exemple, où les plateformes ont été importantes pour pousser, disons, à des mécanismes de mise en place de réformes qui avaient déjà été votées des années auparavant, mais qui n'avaient jamais été mises en place sur le terrain. Euh, voilà, même chose au Malawi. Et dernier point, l'impact des plateformes, il ne faut pas négliger l'impact en termes de renforcement de capacité, non seulement des membres de la plateforme eux-mêmes, bien sûr, sur le long terme, mais aussi des techniciens ou des fonctionnaires ou même des hommes politiques qui sont des champions, ou qui peuvent être des avocats de la réforme, mais qui sont minoritaires. Et souvent, le dialogue avec eux, les équipes, disons, ou leur permet de renforcer leur argumentaire d'influer ensuite sur les politiques. Voilà, merci.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christian. Yes, I think some very interesting thoughts, especially around reframing sort of public discourse and the key role of capacity. Having had worked on multi-stakeholder platforms myself for over 12 years, capacity building is not by any means an easy feat, but it is something that needs to be sustained over time. And with these multi-stakeholder platforms, there is an opportunity also to sort of shed light and put a spotlight on building that capacity. And so that also, we can come back to that a little bit later in terms of financial costs and sustainability and that need for capacity to be sustained also over time, as I see some questions. But I will move over to Amel on that note. Again, sort of with your experience, very in-depth experience over a range of countries, what successes have multi-stakeholder platforms achieved beyond policy changes and changes in legislation and policy? So please, over to you, Amel.
Merci Nathalie. Moi, j'aimerais peut-être réinsister sur le fait que le travail conduit au sein des plateformes change de nature réellement profonde et durable la manière dont les acteurs se parlent et collaborent. Et c'est un point, je pense, qui doit continuer à être réaffirmé parce qu'on observe dans certains pays des dynamiques vraiment majeures qu'on n'aurait jamais pu espérer. Et je voudrais prendre pour exemple le cas de la Guinée, où en fait c'est réellement grâce à la mise en place de la plateforme que des mécanismes de dialogue entre ministères ont pu s'installer, se pérenniser, engager ces deux ministères dans une dynamique collaborative commune, alors qu'auparavant des phénomènes de compétition institutionnelle assez forts s'exerçaient. Et donc ce placement des plateformes en dehors de l'appareil d'État a joué un rôle fondamental pour engager les acteurs dans cette dynamique commune, collaborative, dans la durée. Je voulais souligner aussi le rôle important des plateformes pour faire remonter des territoires les réalités de pratiques gestion foncière locales et les amener dans le dialogue de politique publique. Parce que là aussi, on peut, dans certains pays, être dans des contextes où c'est très difficile de sortir dans les discussions de ce qui est dans les textes juridiques. Et donc, les plateformes, de ce point de vue-là, de par leur diversité d'acteurs, leur ancrage sur le terrain, jouent un rôle vraiment prépondérant. Et du coup, ça fait bouger les lignes dans la manière dont les questions sont posées, dans les décisions qui sont prises. Et là encore, pour rester sur la Guinée, grâce au travail de la plateforme, son ancrage, la collaboration avec les organisations paysannes, les mécanismes de gestion traditionnels du foncier ont vraiment pu être mis en discussion au niveau national et un consensus a été créé sur la nécessité de reconnaître ces droits fonciers locaux dans leur diversité, de pouvoir porter dans la réforme la mise en place de cadres et de mécanismes de gouvernance qui soient accessibles à tous les acteurs du monde rural. Donc ça, je pense, c'est des acquis très importants dans la manière dont les gens perçoivent les priorités qui doivent être soulignées. Et puis, je voudrais dire aussi que dans des pays où les réformes sont en panne, et il y en a pas mal, donc là, j'ai un exemple au Sénégal, en fait, le rôle des plateformes reste primordial pour continuer à alimenter les débats, parce que même si les processus politiques sont à l'arrêt, sur le terrain, les dynamiques foncières se poursuivent via des projets qui peuvent parfois, lorsqu'ils sont déployés à grande échelle, en réalité constituer des sortes de réformes foncières par le bas qui seront institutionnalisées, officialisées plus tard. Et de ce point de vue-là, le rôle de veille, d'alerte joué par la société civile et par les plateformes demeure très importante pour pouvoir continuer à mettre à l'agenda ces problématiques et continuer à faire porter des propositions qui répondent à l'intérêt du plus grand nombre.
Thank you very much, Amel. Yeah, really very interesting insights. I think something that's quite interesting that you touched on a bit was this sort of interface to improve, overlapping mandates and different government authorities and to strengthen the collaboration between the various different reform actors, and using multi-stakeholder platforms sometimes as a tool to also improve efficiency in many ways in that respect, and communication and synergy. So thank you very much for that. Now I would like to move on to a sort of cohort of country experiences, and I will move to Sochia. So Sochia, I'll ask you the same question. In the experience of the MRLG Customary Tenure Alliance multi-stakeholder platform, how has the alliance, the platform been successful or not in land policy reform? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. So I think I like to bring the plus side and the minus side. I don't think we can say we are successful, but there are some results that we can reflect upon the process, upon years of implementation. I think one thing, as I mentioned earlier, that the Alliance was purely civil society organization, no government representative. So one thing is that it offers space for different organizations, for different alliance members to come constructively discuss, identify the root cause, and have a lot of discussions on the issue, I believe, because land and natural resource management issue in Cambodia sometimes politically sensitive, and especially when we touch upon the land issue and about the human rights issue, it's sometimes politicized when people are talking about that, and especially in the context of conflict, in the context of overlap claim between communities, custom with 10 years rights and private large-scale private company, and especially when we touch upon the ineffectiveness of conservation, which is the mandate of government. So I think, at least I think in that sense, I think the Alliance offers space. I think the space that's not only the meeting of the Alliance member, but also the connection between different members together. When we have issue, we can discuss, and I think that that is the conversation that have ongoing among the Alliance member. And I think the second thing is that we have the various capacity of member bring on the table, and I believe that allows us not only the discussion, the full discussion about the issue, but also something that we can bring up to the table when we speak to a certain government counterpart that back with the evidence from the implementation on the ground. I think in the case of our alliance, I think we have at least 3 of our members implement on the ground, on the practice side, implement the policies, measures on the ground, and we bring up the lesson learned from that implementation. I think that is two things that we feel that is a plus result. But I also like to bring a couple of not so good thing from us is that in the context of Cambodia, I think the political system is very close. We understand that, and then a multi-stakeholder platform, and I think especially in the customary tenure, as I mentioned, it very easy to be politicized to other issues which the alliance member cannot speak quite openly, strictly in that sense. And also when we speak about the issue of customary tenures, I think like it or not, we have to fit that into the legal system, institutional system in the country, land, natural resource governance. So at least for ministries, government ministry encompass this issue. I think Ministry of Land Management, Ministry of Environment in Cambodia, Ministry of Forestry in Cambodia, Ministry of Rural Development in Cambodia, tied with indigenous people development. So in that sense, when we speak about customary tenure issue, it's gonna cut across different sector, different ministries. So one single issue can cut across 4 or 5 ministries, cut across different legislation, different law, different guidelines. So that is a thing that we found a little bit difficult for us. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you very much, Sochia. Yes, absolutely. We complicate, I mean, life and land governance is complicated in and of itself, especially when communities practice customary tenure over territories that are beyond what, government categories of forest land or agricultural land is, right? It's a living mosaic of territories that are alive and change and shift. So that in and of itself is a challenge. But I am glad you spoke a bit about evidence-based advocacy, because that is something that has been, I know, very, very important and fundamental in the functioning of the stakeholder platform in Cambodia. At this stage, I'm very glad to see Abu Bakar on video, which means hopefully we have a good connection. If we don't have a good one, you can take off your video and potentially that will make it better. But let's move over to you. So Sochia was talking a bit about, and so were our other panelists, Amel and Christian, sort of how multi-stakeholder platforms can improve land policy and reform from their perspectives. But even more importantly, I think, is to hear also from you and to hear that other side of the story from government. So please, Abu Bakar, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so our case has proven that multi-stakeholder platforms are very useful instruments and tools, to advance policy advocacy and legislative reforms around. I'll give you a case. Our policy was adopted in 2015, but actually the implementation of the policy started like 7 years after the adoption of the policy in 2022, which is an indication that whether you call it resistance or there are still some challenges with certain groups of people coming to understanding the realities and embracing the policy objectives. So in 2022, because of the fact that we had like the multi-stakeholder platform, which was just starting at the time with the support of civil society organizations, they were able to pull some voice together. And what is unique about the multi-stakeholder platform is the fact that you are not going to be challenged with a situation that, or maybe there's a group of people who have come together just maybe to witch hunt what we are doing, because this is comprising every player, every relevant player who is relevant in land administration in a way. They have representatives from traditional authorities, from government ministries, agencies, and departments, from civil society organizations, from women's groups. These are all critical players. So it's very important that we give credit to the role that they are playing, especially when you zoom in on coordination. Because sometimes the effective implementation of policies and legislations actually require some very robust consultations and coordination, and that is what the multi-stakeholder platform is addressing for government. So for us in Sierra Leone, we consider them as an auxiliary, to the enforcement of the laws that have been enacted. And that's the reason why at the National Land Commission here, who is representing government in land administration in Sierra Leone, we have taken on the onus to adopting the multi-stakeholder platform and anchoring them on the legislations that have been born. We give them more authority when they intervene in the space, which was previously not the case. But based on what I have already established about the significant contributions which multi-stakeholder platforms are making to the whole entire land reform exercise in Sierra Leone, we think we need to embrace them and give them more voice.
Thank you so much, Abu Bakar. It's great to hear you, and we're very glad your connection is stable because you've shared a lot of many very interesting things. I think something that struck out to me in your comments were this, this sort of need for continuity, as Inge mentioned before, and several others have mentioned as well, that, these multi-stakeholder platforms can continue and cross these sectors, as Sochia was saying. But also what you were mentioning is, what's important for these, it's important for these platforms to remain sort of to take many different forms, to stay flexible and agile while also staying dedicated to the objective. So, multi-stakeholder platforms are complex and sometimes have a lot of participants, but at the same time, there's also sort of a policy objective and a need to shepherd the discussion forward, which can also be somehow very difficult if too participatory, right? If there are too many people and it becomes too difficult to hear the voices of everyone. So it's this delicate balance, how to maintain a delicate balance between flexibility and agility and participation, and really having that meaningful participation for change on the ground. So thank you for that very, very inspiring, those very inspiring thoughts of seeing multi-stakeholder platforms as auxiliary to the functioning of the land committee. So on that note, I would like to go to Kate. And Kate, please, I would like to hear your reflections on the same question about the success of multi-stakeholder platforms.
Yeah, I think one key input I can bring into it for us, it has been that multi-stakeholder platforms have helped us to tackle some of the barriers that we had in terms of bringing about meaningful change. When we started discussing and dialoguing with government on the issue of having a new law brought into place, our main goal when we came to the table and put down the knives was to find out that we all had the same goal. We all had the same goal at the end of it, is to ensure that the communities have access to secure tenure. How we did that was a bit different. So government was more focused on the technical side to say, let's do mapping, let's do this and this. But then because there was this space, we found out that as civil society, maybe our priorities were saying that, no, I mean, the mapping is okay, but also bringing issues of gender, of inclusion, of how culture will be influenced. Speaking of culture, we also had strong resistance from traditional leaders, some that were misinformed, some that were benefiting from the uncertainty of customary tenure at that time, who rose up and opposed the enactment of these laws. Now, if government tried to engage them, it did bear a lot of weight because they said you are the policyholder, you are supposed to support this. But in this space of the MSP, we were able to sit down, government and civil society, and say, how do we reach out to our traditional leaders and help them understand that this reform is if taken from a positive light, it benefits the community, it benefits them. It's also in the same engagements that we're also able to sit down and map a way of how do we bring in the private sector as well, as a partner, and not necessarily always as an adversary and whatnot. So it has been very instrumental to have this space and to help us bridge gaps, and break barriers that that could have been difficult for either one of us to tackle on ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kate. Yes, absolutely. I like the metaphor of coming to the table and putting down the knives, even if it's something else like an axe or a piece of grain. And how instrumental these platforms have been to make bridges and break barriers to talk about change. And I think your comments are resonate very much with our other panelists in terms of, essentially the goal is there to improve land governance. It's how we get there and how multi-stakeholder platforms can be a vehicle to achieve that goal, even if they're temporary and there's not continuity. So there's also value in that, in breaking those barriers and bridging those gaps. Inge, I will turn to you for a bit of a broader reflection on this same question. So how successful have multi-stakeholder platforms been in land policy advocacy and reform? Over to you for your experience and your thoughts.
Thank you so much. So yeah, let me start to give you two recent examples of platforms from Central Africa, a region sub-region that is not represented here. So Chad and Cameroon. In both of these countries, these MSPs are in place with a government decree for support of the land policy formulation. And both are actually successes of development partners working closely together in a joint group task force to support these policy processes in a coordinated way. So for instance, in Cameroon, when the World Bank recently arrived with a large program, they decided that rather than supporting the government with preparation of sectoral urban land policy, to align their interventions with the ongoing dynamics around the elaboration of a national land policy, which was already supported by a group of partners. And this land policy process started a little bit more than 1 year ago with the establishment of an MSP by the government decree. And today, all the main partners and donors that are active of land are supporting this roadmap, the same roadmap. So whereas there was already a civil society-led coalition, the National Land Coalition in the place, they are now member of this national government-driven broader platform for the land reform. And it shows the importance of having very clear role and responsibilities of these different platforms and coalitions that exist in the country to not create confusion from the government side. And the example of Chad is also an interesting one, because besides the establishment of a multi-stakeholder committee led by the government, there's also a task force of development partners in place to support this in a coordinated way. For example, the World Bank, FAO, Oxfam, Cadastre International, but also research allies, for example, the International Institute for Environment and Development, are part of this. And it has been a successful example, rather than having ad hoc intervention, to having a coordinated group of actors that working together with regular meetings, defining joint advocacy and policy technical support as well. And to conclude with one of the aspects that is also very innovative on this support to the land reform in Chad is that some of our partners established a consortium, FAO, Oxfam, Cadastre International, and we run together with a project proposal for the land scale program, and we got it. And so today, rather than in the past where we all had different projects with different log frames, etc., we have one log frame, one action plan, and we support this in a very strongly coordinated way to the government. So this is also a model of joint programming, of joining forces to be more coordinated. And then to conclude, as I said, FAO is supporting through government, but this is not the only thing we're doing. And I truly agree with Christian that impact is much broader. It's not just impact for the policy reform, the MSPs, the fact of mobilizing these change agents and allies within the government and other sectors, traditional chiefs, etc., pastoralist organization, having these change agents, even with a few change agents in the country, well mobilized and trained, you can drive this very far. So I truly agree on that. And as I also mentioned, I also see that the degree of success is depending on how we coordinate ourselves or support partners as a mobilized group, joining forces rather than having these ad hoc interventions often overlapping. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingeborg. Yeah, that very interesting examples from Cameroon and Chad. And I think what resonates with me is something that we've been thinking a lot about as our MRLG project is actually closing this year after 11 years of supporting multi-stakeholder platforms, is that idea of, consortium-led development and consortium-led support to different platforms, and how critical that is, and really thinking about pooled funding and joint programming, and having these processes be much more collective and also inclusive. I think, when you talk about looking at pooled funding, it's about also highlighting and ensuring that the voices of various actors who might not necessarily be too loud in these platforms are also heard when creating these proposals, like local communities, marginalized communities, ethnic minorities, indigenous peoples, and women. So there are always so many challenges, but I do think that what is really coming through very clearly here with this conversation is talking about this impact. It's the impact of multi-stakeholder platforms, whether or not that stakeholder platform improves policy on land governance is somehow secondary to the much broader and more important impacts that those multi-stakeholder platforms are having in the meantime, in terms of shifting relationships, and having impact beyond that initial objective. So with that, let's do our final round of questions for the panelists today before we get to audience questions. Christian, as Inge has sort of led us nicely to this point, could you share a few key lessons you've learned from engaging in this experience, the CapEx, but also your experience as well? Over to you.
Oui, je vais essayer d'être bref. Je vais juste insister sur 3 points. Bon, quelque chose qui a été déjà dit, c'est que les processus de réforme foncière et de réforme de gouvernance se situent dans la durée, donc les plateformes ont besoin d'un appui sur la durée aussi. Voilà. Et les résultats arrivent quelquefois après de nombreuses années de manière assez difficile à prévoir. Euh, le besoin de flexibilité et d'ajustement, et les plateformes doivent être capables, enfin celles qui réussissent, montrent des capacités à s'adapter aux changements de politique et à changer leur mode d'action et leur thème de travail en fonction des priorités du moment, des priorités du gouvernement. Donc on a plusieurs exemples là-dedans. Je ne vais pas détailler. Et finalement, l'importance qui a été mentionnée par le haut commissionnaire, M. Sapey-Foray, l'importance de la crédibilité. Les plateformes ont une valeur pour les gouvernements dans la mesure où non seulement elles représentent évidemment pas mal de parties prenantes qui ne sont pas toujours audibles, mais aussi parce qu'elles sont capables d'amener des informations fiables depuis de ce qui se passe sur le terrain. Et pour ça, un des mécanismes qui est le plus efficace, enfin qui s'est montré très efficace, c'est que les plateformes puissent disposer de relais, de quelque sorte de sous-plateforme régionale ou sous-régionale, où les questions peuvent être discutées, ce qui est et où, en lien avec les autorités locales et les organisations paysannes locales, la situation du foncier puisse être analysée, puis représentée à l'autorité nationale. Parce qu'il y a souvent des cas où le pouvoir central, disons, a du mal à avoir une image précise de ce qui se passe sur le terrain. Voilà. Euh, je vais m'arrêter là.
Thank you very much, Christian. I know you have lots of insights on this. I appreciate keeping it short, but it was short and very sweet. And I think, again, coming back to this importance of credibility, flexibility, and also long-term financial support. So how do these pooled funding, these funding mechanisms, or these partners, development partners who are engaged with ensuring somehow their funding is going towards supporting these platforms, how can they show value where there are impacts that are not measurable in a scale or in a nice sort of Excel table of monitoring and evaluation with numbers. And so that's really something that we discuss and we think about a lot also, is showing the value that's beyond policy change in multi-stakeholder platform, and the need for those policies and those processes to have long-term support. And maybe that's not an external form of support either. Maybe that's something that's internally, and maybe there's a system and a mechanism that is incorporated within these multi-stakeholder platforms that can continue to provide support for them. So over to Amel, maybe we can ask you some key lessons that you learned from these processes as well. Amel, please.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Nathalie. Donc, pour compléter ce que disait Christian, en effet, moi, je voulais peut-être souligner la qualité du caractère inclusif permis par les plateformes et montrer que aujourd'hui, en tout cas dans les enseignements qu'on tire dans plusieurs pays, les plateformes ont réussi à créer des cadres qui sont aujourd'hui jugés pertinents, légitimes, adaptés pour conduire des processus inclusifs de concertation sur les questions foncières, mais aussi parfois sur des sujets un peu plus larges qui touchent aux problématiques de développement rural. Et donc ça, c'est des choses aussi importantes puisqu'elles ont réussi à construire cette légitimité. Finalement, les acteurs s'en saisissent aujourd'hui pour d'autres processus. Donc, je voulais citer le cas de la Guinée, par exemple, où en effet, il y a une plateforme nationale qui a créé des cadres de concertation régionaux qui viennent alimenter les processus au niveau national, mais qui viennent aussi, en fait, qui sont aussi investis par les acteurs régionaux sur des problématiques qui ne concernent que leur région. Et donc ça, c'est aussi des acquis, des enseignements très forts, je pense qu'on peut tirer de ces plateformes, des leçons importantes pour la suite. Et toujours pour continuer sur cette question de l'articulation des échelles, là, on a beaucoup parlé des processus politiques conduits au niveau national, mais on peut aussi souligner que les plateformes parfois s'investissent sur des dynamiques d'envergure supérieure au niveau des espaces économiques régionaux. Et là, je voulais citer peut-être l'exemple des plateformes en Afrique de l'Ouest qui se sont mobilisées très fortement l'an dernier pour conduire des processus de concertation autour des enjeux relatifs au pastoralisme, pour alimenter un grand forum organisé par les institutions sous-régionales et dont les contributions ont été majeures pour orienter les recommandations, les orientations prises. Et donc tout ça, c'est aussi des acquis, des enseignements et un élargissement finalement de la portée des plateformes qui, je pense, est importante à tenir compte dans le maintien de leur dynamisme, de leur légitimité, crédibilité et contribution au dialogue politique aux différentes échelles.
Thank you so much, Amel. Because we have 10 minutes left, I would actually like to ask the remaining participants for this to be somewhat of a quick round. So, and for you all to share one key lesson. So, Suchia, I'll go to you. Could you please share one key lesson?
Okay, thank you, Natalie. So I think back to the customers' tenure recognition alliance. So purely civil society organization. So I think one lesson that we learn is that it not always bad, but also creative space, but allow us to have a kind of, I call it adaptive way of communicating our point to the government. We have different government. So the point is that we have different members. So some of the member may be respected by the government, where other member may have different way of respected. For example, here, RECOF may be more closely with the municipal environment. We have the formal collaboration with the ministries. We have one of our board of trustees from the ministry. So any communicating point from us on behalf of the alliance would be more effective with the municipal environment. So I think whereas the NGO forum is the member of technical working group on land with the Ministry of Land Management, they might be in a well position of communicating our point. So the point is, okay, we have one common voice, but we have one message, but different way of communicating. So thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, Sochia, for keeping it brief. Yeah, very, very important that there might be a multi-stakeholder platform that has an overarching objective, but there are also different modalities to implement those objectives and different actors within those platforms, and that's exactly why they have such value, right? To have those different voices and different channels and different levels of access. So thank you very much, Sochia. Over to you, Abu Bakar, if you could share one key lesson, we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, maybe I'll just build on the last speaker's submission, because of the fact that we're working in very different environments. So it's very important for us to understand that the context could be different, based on the culture, the traditions, and other environmental variables within the environment in which you operate. So there's no one size fit all. So in that light, one of the recommendations that I would like to put forward is that in order for us to be able to sustain the multi-stakeholder platform process, it was very important for us to understand that we must build it around what operates within our own environment, and that's like ensuring that it's fit for purpose. And also we must make sure that we have a clear definition of the roles, the responsibilities of the multi-stakeholder platforms, in the various jurisdictions where they are. The reason why this is important is because most of the time, some other groups in society, say, for instance, traditional authorities in our case, we sometimes see them as, or maybe this is another group of civil society who is coming to condemn, to challenge practices, because we get challenges of that nature from time to time in our context. I don't know if that's the same with other countries. So it's very important that you have clarity on their roles and responsibilities, so that those members who are coming from, for instance, the traditional authorities who are coming into the fold of the MSP will be able to clearly understand, the purpose of the MSP, the functions of the MSP, the limits of the MSP.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abu Bakar. Yeah, very, very interesting and very important to consider clarity on the roles and responsibilities, but also flexibility in terms of incorporating different actors within these platforms and their roles, but also, at the same time, while also trying to keep the door open for meaningful participation. So thank you very much. I will go over to Kate and then Inge. So Kate, please give one lesson learned, and then we'll go to Inge. So hopefully we have time for one question from the floor.
Yes, I think just to add on to what everybody has said is that as much as we invest in what the MSP is doing outside, it's also very significant and important to invest in the governing structures, the facilitation, and the internal mechanism that makes the MSP work. This is as much as important as we do outside, because if we don't strengthen the facilitation and the internal mechanism of the MSP, it won't be as effective in influencing what's out there as well. I think that would be my addition. Thank you.
Absolutely, Kate. Thank you very much. The importance of investment into the internal mechanisms and the coordination mechanism is indeed very, very critical. So Inge, over to you for a last panel reflection and one key lesson or challenge.
Thank you so much. I had several, so let me try. Okay, so I see the situation as the following. We receive more and more requests to these land reforms, which is a positive trend. For example, over the last year, FAO received alone 8 requests for new countries willing to engage in these included land reforms. That's great. But at the same time, we have funding shrinking to these processes. So we are obliged to join our forces to support these countries in a very coordinated way. And here I would also call for a shift in our mindsets as support partners, then rather than competing for funding in the landscape of shrinking funding, but trying to come together and collaborate based on complementarity. And here, I mean, look at how can we, as different support partners, playing a complementary role. For example, FAO, we have strong experience of mobilizing the government because we're having easy access to the government. So this is an advantage for FAO. Other partners, civil society, Oxfam, for example, in the example of Chad, they're mobilizing the actors, they are doing their advocacy, they're leading on that. So we all have complementary roles, and we join our forces and we focus on what we are good at and do this together. And so I strongly believe that by developing coordinated joint interventions and by better defining these complementarities in our role to these MSP land reform processes, we can increase our chances, become more efficient, and also maximizing our collective impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Inga. Absolutely. I appreciate that call for more coordinated interventions by having better different definition around our roles and responsibilities. And I think that's a great moment to stop our dialogue and to have maybe a very, very quick answer. So thank you very much for all of you to contribute. We've had a lot of questions. I'm particularly interested by questions that are around financing and sustaining the financing. But I think one question that we've had a lot of is about inclusion. So how to ensure that these multi-stakeholder platforms can include both Indigenous peoples and local communities and also women. And I would like Kate, maybe if you could just give a very quick response to that. You mentioned that a bit earlier. So please, over to you, Kate, for a quick response.
Yeah, I think for us, what has helped us is a very thorough stakeholder mapping of all that we need to be involved in, and also investing in contextualized capacity building for example, women groups, indigenous communities who may not have the skills or the confidence to speak up in our platforms. Pairing them, mentorship programs with other organizations that are doing much more better so that they are given the extra push that they need to make sure that their issues are set across. You can even observe in an MSP that, for example, development partners, national civil society organizations don't need that much help in making their voice heard, but just specifically building the confidence and the capacity of the marginalized groups to be able to make their voice heard in these forums also bears a lot of fruit. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kate. I would love to get to some other really, really fantastic questions. Unfortunately, we have not enough time here. Maybe if I would just ask a sort of lightning round, all panelists to put on your cameras, maybe say just one word or one thought that you're coming away with from this panel. I will go to Christian first. Quickly, just something that comes to mind.
C'est impressionnant de voir toute cette expérience accumulée sur le plan international. Euh, je suis d'accord avec Ingeborg, il faut que les initiatives s'articulent mieux, mais il faut aussi accepter que le fait qu'elles ont besoin d'un soutien de part de la communauté internationale, un soutien continu, ce qui ne veut pas forcément dire des sommes très importantes. Mais on ne peut pas simplement dire, ah ben voilà, là, ici, il y a une opportunité, c'est là qu'on va investir, et puis ailleurs, si la volonté n'existe pas, on fait rien. Il faut mettre toutes les chances de notre côté, je dirais.
Thank you. Thank you, Christian. Okay, so Chia, maybe just something very brief. What's something that has inspired you or something that you'll leave this session with? And then I'll go to Inga, Amel, Kate, and Abubakar.
Yes, I think just one word from me is a multi-stakeholder platform should be adaptive. I think we see that in the case of Cambodia, there are a multi-stakeholder platform that will work only with the civil society. We are from the Africa. There is participation and respect from the government partners to value the voice from the multi-stakeholder platform member. We also hear the example of a beauty of having the one resource to pull together all the platform members, and we also have I also see the situation in Cambodia where all the members coming together with different resources from their own. There are strategic investment by Mekong regional land governance to fill the gap. But this is something that I will bring back with me, is being adaptive, both in the way we process as a multi-stakeholder platform and both in the way that we communicate with the government's stakeholder.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Okay, Kate.
Yeah, one takeaway for me is like viewing the MSPs not as projects, but for me, I would say as processes. So once you change that perspective, even the issues of sustainability and financing and how we carry this forward will be built in your programming, because you're not seeing this as something that has an end date, but it's a process that you want to sustain so that an agenda keeps featuring prominently in our nation's development agenda as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. And thank you for being so succinct. I believe in the order I mentioned Inga. So Inga, please. And then Amel.
Thank you so much. So yeah, as I said, for me, the main takeaway is like coordination, better coordination. Try to build on these complementarities and have clear roles and responsibilities of how we support, and coordinate. This helps the government, it helps the stakeholders on the ground. We see again and again on the ground that the same partners are supporting the same stakeholders with the same stakeholder committee aspects, etc., with the same participants, and it creates a lot of confusion. So coordination. And then also like the question that was in the chat for the political will. I fully agree that political will can be mobilized, and that's why I always see the advantages of having an MSP. My problem is just when it's not well defined, because when it's not well defined and it comes as a surprise to the government, then it gives backlash. But if it's a multi-stakeholder platform, civil society alliance, call it that, then I don't think that the government will have this backlash. But if it's a multi-stakeholder platform claiming to be a multi-stakeholder platform, supporting land reform, and the government is not on board from the very beginning, this is the problem I see. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Inga. I hope our translators got all of that. If not, I'm sure they got a little bit, but thank you. Amel, over to you, please.
Merci beaucoup. Moi, peut-être que je voudrais renforcer les points liés à la qualité du dialogue entre les individus, parce qu'on parle beaucoup d'organisation. Derrière, ce sont des hommes, des femmes qui parlent, qui cheminent pendant la durée. Donc ça, je pense que c'est des points aussi très importants à faire durer, au-delà des appartenances institutionnelles respectives. Et puis peut-être revenir aussi, nous, en tant qu'accompagnateurs, sur l'importance de la flexibilité et de la réactivité. Quand il y a des fenêtres d'opportunité qui s'ouvrent, il faut pouvoir répondre. Et ça, je pense que ça fait partie aussi de nos responsabilités.
Thank you very much, Amel. And over to you, Abu Bakar, for the last reflection before we close.
Yeah, so my take is I believe that the multi-stakeholder
Unfortunately, Abu Bakar, it seems like your connection
platform, and that will be enhanced maybe through doing a more thorough.
Oops.
Sorry. To be part of the multi-stakeholder platform, and make sure you have those stakeholders in the fold. Now, yes. So like I was saying, making it inclusive, and most importantly, also making sure in the area of the political will, I think it's very important for where we have land management institutions, like in our case, what we are doing here in Sierra Leone currently is to anchor the process, the multi-stakeholder platform. That's like bringing it closer, to government. Because when you provide a platform like that for the multi-stakeholder platform, that's like closing the gap between the platform and government, which will be very essential for facilitating the work of the MSP. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so very much for this extremely interesting conversation. I believe that we could have 3 or 4 more of these and still not be able to unpack everything that we would like to. But quickly from what I'm hearing, there's a lot where the panel collectively stands in terms of mobilizing financial support, coordinating mechanisms to ensure that financial support is sustainable, but also ensure that these coordination platforms remain relevant and continue to exist and fit the purpose of improving land governance in policy and reform. What I'm also hearing a lot about has been the credibility, so establishing credibility through our government partners that we heard from Inga and Abu Bakar as well, but also from civil society and local communities, how that stays relevant and adaptive and flexible. It is a challenge, but luckily we've heard that there have been some really very good examples of multi-stakeholder platforms that exist. The key here is flexibility, the ability to be adaptable, but also the political will to continue to engage on those political spaces. Something that resonates from me from the Mekong region, having seen over the 7 years that I've been engaging in the Mekong region, is political will and potentially a shift in the political will thanks to the existence of multi-stakeholder platforms. And these multi-stakeholder platforms, which I'm referring to, especially in Laos, for example, have taken various different forms, and therefore it seems to have led to an increase in political will to engage in these spaces. So there's very much hope, and I'd like to leave that on a hopeful note, while for us all to be also wary that these platforms need to be accountable, they need to be transparent, and most importantly, they need to be participatory, and they need to represent the people who actually steward and govern a lot of the world's land and territories, which are local communities, indigenous peoples, and that women often remain the most vulnerable and excluded over these in these decision-making platforms. So we are hopefully moving towards a more informed political space about the power and challenges and opportunities of engaging in multi-stakeholder platforms. So a big virtual round of applause to all of our panelists, to all of you audience for sticking around past 10 minutes, past the closing time. It's really been wonderful to see so many very, very interesting questions that we haven't been able to answer. I would encourage you all to reach out to the panelists that you're interested in engaging with after the webinar. Their emails will also be available in the article that Land Portal will share, and so you can have their contact information. I will urge you to also take the survey that Neil has circulated in the chat, so that Land Webinar has some information from all of you. And thank you all again very much. Another thank you to our interpreters who have stayed very vigilant with all of our various interventions and conversations. So many thanks. Have a good day, a good evening, a good morning, and hope to see you all again here in another way. Thanks a lot, and thanks for being here.